My name is Lily Anderson. I'm 28, and until Thursday night, I thought I knew everything about Stephen Jones, my boyfriend of 3 years. 3 years that had felt like a lifetime of comfort, shared bills, vacations, and quiet routines. But that night, everything cracked. We were sitting in our living room. Stephen, 30, pretending to focus on a movie, while I scrolled on my phone, trying not to notice the little signs that had been gnawing at me all week. His phone buzzed, he flinched, then quickly angled it away, pretending it was nothing. My chest tightened. Small things, I told myself. Innocent things. But the flicker of that familiar, secretive smile made my heart sink. That smile. The one that used to make my stomach flip when we first started dating. Another buzz. He typed with both thumbs now, completely absorbed. I felt the chill of a suspicion I didn't want to name. Who was he texting so feverishly? And then I saw it. Jenna, his ex. My throat went dry. Not just a friend, not a casual acquaintance. Jenna. The one who had once been his whole world and now supposedly completely out of it. Yet here she was, flooding his phone with laughter, inside jokes, messages that made him smile like a teenager. I tried to steady my voice. Stephen, who's texting you? He didn't flinch. He just laughed. Not nervously, not apologetically, just laughter. Oh, it's nothing. Just texts. You're being dramatic, Julia. Dramatic. The word echoed in my mind. A shield he had always used to dismiss me, to turn my concerns into my fault. My pulse steadied. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even shout. I got up slowly, letting my heels click against the hardwood, and walked toward our bedroom. Julia, where are you going? We're talking, he called after me, amusement dripping from his voice. I opened the closet. The suitcase was there, the expensive leather one I had bought him for our trip to Europe last year. I pulled it out and placed it on the bed. My hands were steady, my heart a mix of cold fury and clarity. Not his clothes, mine. He followed me, still smirking. Wait, are you packing your stuff in my suitcase? I ignored him, folded my shirts, my jeans, carefully rolled my work clothes, grabbed my toiletries, razor, perfume, skincare, and stacked them with meticulous precision. This isn't funny, Julia, he said, voice rising, tone tinged with panic now. Stop being childish. Neither was being cheated on. I zipped the suitcase, pulled out the matching carry-on, and began packing my shoes, my laptop, my files. Important documents, passport, birth certificate, tax returns, everything that belonged to me. Stephen's smirk faltered. You're really leaving? Over some texts? I stopped and looked at him, calmly, almost detached. Not leaving over texts, leaving over betrayal. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing. Julia, it's just Jenna. We're just friends. Friends, I repeated under my breath, letting the word taste bitter on my tongue. 2 months of messages, of secret coffee meetings he lied about, all under the guise of friendship. Right. I opened my laptop and booked a nearby hotel. Extended stay, easy cancellation. Stephen's voice shook now. Julia, you can't just... This is crazy. Come on. I kept packing, rolled my suitcase to the door, pulled the carry-on behind me. Everything I needed for freedom. Not revenge, not yet, but clarity, autonomy. My mind was clear, laser-focused. No yelling, no begging, just action. You can't just leave me here, he shouted, panic-stricken now. I love you. Funny how love suddenly shows up in the wrong hands, when the damage is already done. I stopped, looked at him one last time. Exactly what you said. Break up with me. The Uber I had booked arrived 8 minutes away. I rolled the suitcase out, feeling the weight of 3 years of my life, my trust, and my love all packed neatly inside. Stephen tried to grab my arm. I pulled free. My mind cataloged everything, the smiles he saved for her, the lies, the betrayal. And yet, I felt calm, empowered. As the Uber driver helped me with the luggage, Stephen called after me, his voice cracking. Julia, please. I love you. You're overreacting. Let's just talk. I opened the door, turned once, and my voice was steady, unwavering. I already am. The door closed behind me. And in that moment, the suitcase wasn't just luggage, it was freedom. The Uber door clicked shut behind me, the leather of my suitcase handle pressing against my palm. Outside, the night smelled like rain and asphalt, a clean kind of clarity after the suffocating haze of betrayal inside the apartment. I leaned back in the seat and let the city lights blur past, my mind already replaying the night in slow motion, cataloging every flicker of Stephen deception, every dismissive laugh, every mockery. He thought he'd caught me off guard, thought he could dismiss months of secret texts and hidden meetings with a few laughs. He was wrong. I reached for my carry-on, ensuring my laptop, my documents, my passport, everything I could need to reclaim control, was safely stowed. Every item was symbolic now, my independence, my foresight, my refusal to be a victim. Stephen had laughed at me when he thought I'd overreacted. Now, he would watch his world shrink around him, piece by piece. Inside the hotel room, I methodically unpacked only what I needed to function: toiletries, clothes, laptop, important documents. I didn't touch the gifts or the memories I had once shared with Stephen. That would come later. For now, I needed to establish boundaries and a base from which to act. My phone buzzed. It was him. Stephen. Caller ID flashed, and I let it ring. Once, twice, then silence. No response. Good. I had learned the power of silence, the quiet that precedes real control. I started drafting a mental checklist, methodical in the way that only someone with a lifetime of self-reliance can be. Utilities, transfer auto pays, insurance, canceled, car plan, updated, social media, secured, legal proof of infidelity, captured, everything needed to protect myself and to make sure Stephen illusions of power crumbled. My thoughts drifted to him for the first time in hours. How easy it had been for him to mock me, to make me feel dramatic. I remembered the little smiles, the way he typed on his phone, the careless way he blocked and unblocked Jenna, the way he thought his secrets were invisible. It had been invisible only to him. I had seen everything. I opened my laptop and logged into the apartment management portal, making notes for eviction notices, utility cancellations, everything I could do remotely. A few clicks, a couple of emails, and my life was already separating from his. I could feel the shift, subtle and satisfying. Stephen didn't know it yet, but every panic call, every pleading text, every manipulative social post he was about to send would land on deaf ears. I had built the buffer, the strategy, the psychological space that ensured he could not pull me back into his web. As I packed my last bag, I took a moment to look around the small hotel room, the city lights reflected in the window, and I let myself imagine a life unburdened by deceit, a life where trust wasn't a weapon. And in that mental image, I could already see the suitcase again, not as a vessel for belongings, but as a symbol of my agency. The Uber driver helped me roll the second bag to the curb. I gave him the address. 8 minutes, just long enough for the final scene to unfold in my mind. Meanwhile, back in the apartment, I knew Stephen was pacing, wondering how I could vanish so calmly. I imagined him running through every possible scenario, panic rising, realization dawning. He hadn't just lost control. He had never had it. Not really, and now the illusion of dominance was collapsing in front of him. I thought about the documentation I had left behind. Screenshots, timestamps, GPS locations, months of messages with Jenna. Every lie he had woven into our life was archived, and every desperate attempt he would make to manipulate me, to salvage his ego, would only feed into the evidence. My mind was already cataloging it, preparing the next moves, the legal and social boundaries that would protect me and, perhaps, deliver poetic justice. By the time the Uber pulled up to the hotel, I was calm, composed, almost serene. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about reclaiming myself, about sending a message through action rather than words. Stephen might have thought laughter could dismiss betrayal, but he had underestimated the power of calculated silence. I stepped out, rolling my suitcase behind me. The night air was cool, clean, invigorating. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt untethered, unbound by his presence, free to start again without fear or apology. In my room, I set my laptop on the desk, opened the folders of screenshots, and let the narrative of betrayal take form. Evidence neatly compiled, timestamps clear, messages organized. It was methodical, it was cold, and it was necessary. Stephen panic would be spectacular, I thought. Friends called, family involved, texts, emails, social media spins, all inevitable. I allowed myself a small smile, not gloating, but acknowledging the clarity of purpose. This was the beginning of the end of the illusion he had built around me. I sat on the bed, suitcase beside me, carry-on at my feet. My reflection in the window stared back, steady, composed, untouchable. The storm had passed, and I was the eye, calm in the center, watching the chaos I had predicted unfold. And somewhere deep inside I knew, this night, this suitcase, this escape, was the first real chapter of my freedom. By Friday morning, the calm I'd carried into the hotel was already starting to contrast sharply with the storm Stephen was creating back at the apartment. My phone, usually a source of connection, had become a barrier. I didn't answer his calls. I didn't reply to his texts. Instead, I documented everything. Screenshots of messages, logs of calls, notes on every lie he had ever told. Stephen's first move was predictable: panic. He called frantically, his voice rising, alternating between pleading and accusations. "Julia, you can't do this. We need to talk. I didn't mean anything." I let it ring, once, twice, then silence. His family got involved almost immediately. His mother called, worry dripping from her voice. "Julia, what's happening? Why are you abandoning him?" I smiled faintly at the irony. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm leaving because I found out he's been lying and betraying me for months. There was a pause, then the familiar line. "Well, people make mistakes. You can't just throw him out." I held the phone steady. I'm not throwing him out. He's making this his own consequence. I'm simply protecting myself. Stephen didn't like being ignored, and his sense of entitlement escalated. He posted a public sob story on social media, carefully crafting a narrative where he was the victim of a dramatic girlfriend abandoning him with nothing. Of course, the cheating, the lies, the months of secret messages were carefully omitted. I considered responding but decided against it. Why argue when facts were on my side and evidence was already documented? His posts were a mirror of desperation, and desperation has a way of revealing true character. Meanwhile, his friends began to receive messages, all spinning versions of our story to manipulate perception. But I had anticipated this. Screenshots of every interaction, every lie, every flirty text from Jenna, already compiled. I could defend myself not just legally, but socially. One by one, the attempts to twist reality would crumble. At the apartment, he began to panic over the practicalities of the life he had taken for granted: utilities, rent, car insurance. All my careful planning meant he faced consequences for assuming my labor and finances were his safety net. Suddenly, reality clashed with entitlement, and the crash was spectacular. Even his attempts at emotional manipulation, pleading, guilt-tripping, begging, met only my silence. I had discovered the most powerful tool of all: detachment. Detached from the drama, detached from his ego, detached from his lies. But the climax of his panic came when he realized the legal implications. My careful documentation meant that eviction notices, bank account security, and proof of infidelity weren't just preparation, they were armor, and he was about to hit it full force. Stephen tried one last desperate measure: identity interference, accessing accounts, social media, trying to manipulate mutual friends. But every move he made was predictable, traceable, and well within the evidence I had gathered. Every desperate act became a step further into accountability. I watched the storm from my quiet, orderly hotel room. My reflection in the window showed calm, steady eyes. Every action I had taken was deliberate, every step measured. I hadn't overreacted. I had not allowed panic or emotion to dictate my response. I had calculated, observed, and acted. And as I poured a cup of coffee, suitcase beside me, I realized something profound. The more he tried to reclaim control, the more I felt freedom. My autonomy was intact. My life was mine. His entitlement, his panic, his obsession, they were all contained within the walls of a crumbling illusion that I had already walked away from. This was just the beginning. The next week would reveal the full extent of the chaos he had sown for himself. But I was ready, calm, prepared, and above all, untouchable. The storm would rage around him, but I had already stepped beyond it. By the following Monday, the full consequences of Stephen entitlement were beginning to materialize. The eviction notice, carefully drafted and officially posted, had shaken him. I knew he had never imagined anyone standing so calmly against his schemes, and now each desperate attempt he made only dug him deeper. I spent the morning reviewing documents in my hotel room, screenshots of messages, call logs, proof of his secret meetings with Jenna, all neatly organized. Every lie, every manipulation, every half-truth was cataloged. I wasn't doing this to humiliate him. I was protecting myself. But the irony of his impending exposure wasn't lost on me. Then came the first ripple, his phone calls to the apartment manager. Stephen claimed, I was overreacting, that I had abandoned him with nothing, that his entire life was in jeopardy. But Robert, the landlord, had all the facts. He knew the lease situation, knew that Stephen had no legal claim over my documents or belongings, and that the notice was procedurally correct. Meanwhile, Stephen escalated his social media tactics. Sob stories, cries of betrayal, accusations of emotional abuse, crafted to elicit sympathy. But I remained detached. Each post was another opportunity for me to document his behavior. Screenshots, timestamps, and context ensured that his narrative couldn't overwrite reality. Then, the audacity. Attempts at identity interference. 3 credit card applications in my name. Unauthorized logins to accounts I had long secured. He had crossed the line, and the law was now an active player in the game. Hours on the phone with banks, filing fraud alerts, documenting every interaction. I was methodical, efficient, unflinching. By midweek, the legal framework was firmly in place. Stephen's attempts to manipulate friends and acquaintances began to backfire. Mutual friends, once on his side, now read the actual messages, the timeline, and the documented betrayals. Their sympathy shifted quietly, decisively. One by one, his support network dwindled. At work, Stephen tried calling and even visiting, claiming emergencies and crises, hoping to leverage professional sympathy. My manager and security team, armed with documented incidents and proof of harassment, ensured he was turned away. Every attempt to pressure or intimidate me failed. I was untouchable in the spaces that mattered. The small victories accumulated. My bank accounts remained secure, my lease obligations clearly defined, my social circles informed but not manipulated. Stephen's fury only intensified. He posted publicly, tried to create chaos, but every post, every desperate call, every misguided attempt at control was met with silence and documented evidence. Even Jenna, the center of this betrayal, quietly removed herself from the picture. The casual indifference she had once flaunted now mirrored Stephen's own unraveling. His actions had consequences beyond what he had imagined, and the fallout was fully contained within the boundaries I had established. By the weekend, the eviction had been enforced. He had no access to the apartment, no legal leverage over my belongings, and no narrative control. The chaos he had tried to manufacture had been absorbed, catalogued, and neutralized. And I, sitting in a quiet, orderly hotel room, suitcase beside me, coffee in hand, felt a profound sense of clarity and control. The suitcase, the careful planning, the silence in the face of panic, it all coalesced into a single truth. Stephen's actions had consequences, but I was beyond revenge. This was justice by design. The calm, methodical steps I had taken ensured that betrayal could not dictate my life, and that the illusions of entitlement and control would collapse entirely under their own weight. I allowed myself a brief smile. Freedom, it turns out, is not loud or dramatic. It is deliberate, patient, and uncompromising. Stephen would learn that, painfully, in the days and weeks to come, and I would continue unshaken, unbound, and entirely in control of my own life. The eviction deadline arrived quietly, almost anticlimactically. Stephen had spent weeks spiraling, calls, texts, social media posts, desperate attempts to manipulate friends and family. None of it mattered anymore. I had stayed detached, documented everything, and let his own actions seal his fate. When Robert, the landlord, texted to confirm that the apartment was finally cleared, I felt a strange mix of relief and detachment. The place had been left in disarray, a testament to his anger and panic, but the physical chaos mattered little. My freedom had been earned in silence, not screams. I moved into my new one-bedroom apartment. A smaller space, yes, but mine. No shadows of betrayal lurking in corners. No manipulations threatening my peace. For the first time in months, the air felt lighter, cleaner. I unpacked carefully, arranging my belongings with intention. My suitcase, once a vessel of my escape, now rested neatly by the bed, a reminder of the calculated power of calm and preparation. The first morning, I brewed coffee and watched the city awaken outside my window. My phone buzzed intermittently, but I didn't answer. Stephen attempts to contact me, pleading, angry, frantic, had been blocked. Jenna had disappeared from the narrative entirely, leaving him alone with the consequences of his choices. I allowed myself a moment of reflection. Betrayal had been painful, but it had not broken me. Instead, it had revealed the depth of my own strength, my ability to act decisively while remaining composed. The lesson was clear. Empowerment is born not from anger, but from strategy, clarity, and self-respect. Friends checked in, cautiously at first, then with curiosity, as the full story leaked through mutual acquaintances. Reactions were mixed, some disbelief, some admiration, some quiet relief that I had acted with foresight rather than emotion. I didn't share details. The narrative was mine to control, and I chose discretion over spectacle. As the days passed, I settled into a routine that was entirely my own. I returned to the gym, reconnected with old friends, and even began exploring hobbies I had neglected. Music, travel, quiet evenings with a book, small indulgences that were now available because I had reclaimed my life. The suitcase sat by the bed, a silent symbol. I had once bought it as a gift, a promise of shared adventures and laughter. That same suitcase had carried me out of betrayal, into freedom. The irony was not lost on me. What had begun as a container for his dreams had become a vessel for my liberation. Stephen? I heard through the gossip network that he had moved back in with his parents, dealing with legal repercussions from his own reckless decisions, his reputation fractured, and his entitlement finally met with consequences. Jenna had ghosted him completely, leaving him to face the fallout alone. I smiled faintly at the thought. Karma had its own timing, precise and inevitable, but it was secondary to the real victory. I had acted. I had taken control. I had walked away, calm, composed, and unbroken. That evening, I packed the suitcase once more, not out of necessity, but in quiet celebration of the lessons learned. A solo trip to Japan was now on the horizon, a promise to myself, freedom, adventure, and self-determination. The city lights shimmered outside, and for the first time, the horizon felt limitless. Sometimes I think about that moment in the apartment, the way he laughed, mocking me, daring me to overreact, the confidence that I would never leave, that I would absorb every betrayal, every cost, every manipulation. I had shown him exactly what I was going to do, not through anger, not through tears, but with calculated, deliberate action. The suitcase had been perfect karma. The bags I had once bought for a shared dream had carried me out of lies and into life. I touched the handle, ran my fingers over the leather, and smiled. 3 years of betrayal, gone. One night, one suitcase, and a lifetime of freedom, mine entirely.